guys, welcome back to my Game of Thrones video. Let's talk about episodes 4, 5, and 6. Episode 4 was pretty bad. Episode 5 was pretty bad. Episode 6 was kind of disappointing, but overall, I liked where the series went. That's it. First of all, I have some corrections from part 1. This guy's name is Gren, not Glenn. I guess Glenn is a pretty bad name for a medieval fantasy. I guess it's not as bad as the showrunners messing up Gendry's surname.
I'm not Gendry Rivers anymore. I'm Gendry Baratheon.
He's not from the Riverlands, though. His name is Gendry Waters, not Gendry Rivers. Then I confused the Battle of the Whispering Wood with the Battle of the Green Fork, which happened in the exact same episode. So you can understand my confusion. Lots of people don't like my plan to hold up in the Vale. Like, if they held up in the Vale, everyone north of the Vale would die. I guess I get that. But they've known the White Walkers were coming for a long time, so maybe they could have evacuated everyone to down south. Some people think it would have been better to hold up in Moat Cailin or the Neck. I'm sure any one of these plans would have been better than just waiting outside Winterfell and just charging at them. Finally, Arya doesn't kill the Night King in the books because there is no Night King in the books. There's a character called the Night's King, which apparently isn't the same as the Night King. But I was watching this behind the scenes thing, and the way they phrase it was weird.
For, God, I think it's probably 3 years now or something, we've known that it was going to be Arya who delivers that fatal blow.
And I thought 3 years ago was the moment where George gave them the note, but apparently 3 years ago they just decided that Arya was going to kill the Night King, and they just didn't build up to it at all, aside from some foreshadowing.
And blue eyes.
Who knows, maybe the Night King will be in the books, he's just not in them yet. Also, I understand Stannis Baratheon's character is different in the books, but that doesn't necessarily mean the show's interpretation of the character is horrible. I've only just started reading these books, but as far as what the show did with him, I was satisfied. We can agree to disagree on that too. Also, there were people who genuinely complained about this chart. Whoa, what was that? Oh, there it is again. Now, I'm not going to discuss in length all of the different fan theories involved in this show. There are many. On one end, I totally agree we should not be incorporating fan theories into Game of Thrones. I'm not interested in seeing what a fan wants to happen in the show. I want to see the story being told. This is George R.R. Martin's story, and he gave permission to Weiss and Benioff to tell it, not some guys on the internet. I want to see a story with a singular vision, not scraps of other people's stories. And when you're trying to incorporate fan theories into your work, you've completely missed the point of storytelling. However, these fan theories do not come out of nowhere, and a lot of these fan theories are based in things that happen in the books, such as the prophesized Azor Ahai, who many believe to be Jon Snow, maybe Jaime Lannister. And what this vast fan community thinks is gonna happen ended up being more interesting than what actually happened in the show. And Arya basically killed the Night King only cause, well, she didn't have anything else to do this season, which is why so many people were pissed off when she killed him. I'm not saying Benioff and Weiss should have incorporated all of them into their story, because of course they have limited time and resources. But they've oversimplified this so much that they've removed all of the meat from the story, and what we're left with is just very hollow. Remember in Game of Thrones when you discovered new places, met new characters, learned new things about the world? For the first half of the series, I feel as if the world of Westeros was expanding, and now it feels as if it's all contracting. This once grand world that we knew is now confined into these two locations. It's almost as if there's nothing left to discover. It's just about wrapping up all that stuff that was set up. I get Dany would feel horrible and panic if she felt her position on the throne was being threatened, but why is she flipping out like a child? Why not propose an intelligent solution?
If we marry them, they could rule together.
She's his aunt.
They never stopped a Targaryen before.
No, but John grew up in Winterfell. Is marrying your Aunt common in the north?
I mean, I guess it could start some trouble, but it's worth a shot.
What about my earlier proposal? They could rule together as king and queen.
She's too strong for him. She'd bend him to her will.
I don't know, Varys. That's a stretch. Like, do you think it's a better solution to just poison her and kill her? Daenerys kind of outed herself as wanting the throne for selfish reasons of power, rather than doing good for the people. She felt it was her destiny, and now her destiny is falling apart before her very eyes. I mean, it doesn't make much sense, and a lot of these people are acting out of character now. Jon Snow is supposed to be so madly in love with Daenerys that all of his rationality just goes out the window. And again, I don't buy this relationship. So Jon Snow being so madly in love with her just doesn't work for me. There's a lot going on. Definitely too much going on. but compared to the boring stabbing, hitting, and dumb tactics of the last episode, here, oh, yeah. How did she not see them? Why didn't she just go around behind them and attack them from behind? You know how you fix this scene? Fog. Or make it nighttime. Like anything. Come on, it's broad daylight. You know, the entire point of the White Walker plot was to show just the futility and the pettiness of man-made conflict. We're all vying for power. Meanwhile, the world-ending consequences are coming, and we're ignoring it. How stupid of us. How silly of us. Now, we're just back to petty squabbling. Daenerys is acting like a baby.
No matter how many times you bend the knee, no matter what you swear.
Jon is acting like a baby, going, oh, I don't want to be the king.
I don't want it.
When we have so many other plot lines and characters to resolve, why is Bronn a part of this? Oh, he's hired by Cersei to go kill Tyrion. And then Bronn just shows up and is like, I want Highgarden. And then they're like, okay, well, we'll give you that. This episode is doing so much that they have to keep cutting out things that I feel are really necessary for the story. Like this whole scene of Euron destroying their fleet and Missandei getting captured is so rushed. How do they even know who Missandei is? They all talk about her as if she's like one of the queens of the land. She's just Daenerys' friend. She's not that important. You're telling me Euron, out of all of these important people that were there, such as Tyrion and Grey Worm and Varys, that he went after Missandei? I'm supposed to believe Varys swam all the way from the ship wreckage to the beach? Jon is about to tell Arya and Sansa that he's a Targaryen. This is a big moment.
Tell them.
What? We spent a whole episode on this stupid battle and Arya running around the hallways of Winterfell, a whole pointless scene with Bronn. But the moment where Jon tells Arya and Sansa that his mother is Lyanna Stark and his father is Rhaegar Targaryen, and we don't see it. I have been waiting for years for the Stark children to reunite and for all of them to have a scene together. And it's such a shame they're all so dull now. Does anyone remember when the Stark children had personalities and camaraderie?
I'm practicing.
Practicing for what?
The prince.
Ah, yes.
They were so entertaining to watch, and I understand they've changed over the years, but they're all so boring now.
We're family. The four of us. The last of the Starks.
My favorite scene this episode was Varys and Tyrion talking about betraying Queen Daenerys.
What is the realm? A vast continent home to millions of people, most of whom don't care who sits on the Iron Throne.
Millions of people, many of whom will die if the wrong person sits on that throne. We don't know their names, but they're just as real as you and I. They deserve to live. They deserve food for their children.
The acting here is fantastic. The dialogue is surprisingly well written.
She's too strong for him.
Alright, except that part. But then this episode ends with this stupid scene. So despite the fact that Cersei sent Bronn to go kill Tyrion, when Tyrion walks right up to her, she decides not to kill him. Also, Daenerys and her general and her dragon are there, and you have no intention of surrendering, and you have all your scorpions pointed at them. So Cersei, why don't you just kill them? Because I feel like that's what you would have done. Since when do you care about the rules of combat? Cersei's been pregnant for at least a few months now, right? And yet there's no sign that she's pregnant. You start getting like a little baby bump anywhere from 12 to 16 weeks. Am I supposed to believe everything that happened from the end of season 7 to this episode was less than 4 months? Based on what we know is going to happen in the next episode, I assume this is the part where Daenerys is supposed to break. I take it this moment is supposed to be very similar to the crawl space scene in Breaking Bad. Now, I don't want to spoil Breaking Bad for anyone who hasn't seen it, so I'm going to keep it very vague. But basically, there are two sides to this character, Walter White. There is the goody two-shoes Mr. Chips Walter White, and then there is the badass Heisenberg. Over the course of this show, Walt becomes less and less of a good guy, and more of an evil motherfucker. And this point right here, where it crosses over, is the crawl space scene. This is the moment where Heisenberg starts to become the one in charge. If I had to draw her graph, I mean, I honestly don't even know how to draw it, because it just doesn't work. First of all, let's explain how Daenerys got to this point. She makes this one dumb move, loses her army in one episode, then she goes north of the wall, and again, despite Tyrion's wishes, loses a dragon. She grieves for it for about a second, but in the next scene she seems okay. If she was really upset about her dragons, we would get a scene like this. It's one of her children, right? That's kind of the reaction she should have.
I can't do it. I really can't.
And she loses Jorah, which is like the only emotional moment that made sense in this entire arc. Her spot on the Iron Throne is threatened when it's revealed that Jon is a Targaryen. And then over the course of the next 20 minutes, she loses her entire fleet, one of her dragons, and her best friend who gets executed shortly after, who she hasn't shared a scene with since this episode. And you wonder why people were confused by this? So the actor who plays Daenerys, Emilia Clarke, said this when asked about Season 8. She said, "Daenerys will be doing all this weird shit in the show's final season. You'll know what I mean when you see it." There's a difference between weird shit and mass genocide. So for many people, this is the episode that completely breaks Game of Thrones, simply because of this character decision. This was too big of a leap for her character.
Mercy is our strength. Our mercy towards future generations. He will never again be held hostage by a tyrant.
There is something kind of chilling about the way that Dany has responded to the death of her enemies.
I don't think she decided ahead of time that she was going to do what she did. And then she sees the Red Keep, which is to her the home that her family built when they first came over to this country 300 years ago. It's in that moment on the walls of King's Landing when she's looking at that symbol of everything that was taken from her, when she makes the decision to make this personal.
Everything Weiss and Benioff do has to be on the extreme ends of the spectrum. Either she kills no one and the city will surrender immediately, or she has to burn the whole entire place to the ground and kill every single man, woman, and child.
You saw my child fall from the sky. They took Missandei.
We don't actually see her grieve over these things. We don't see her reminisce about why these things or these people were important to her. There's just this implied sense of importance. Missandei is gone, and she's been around for a long time in the show, so therefore you should feel sad like her. Her dragons are gone, and they've been around for a long time, so therefore you can understand that she's probably upset. And I guess you can imply these things, but it's far more effective to just show us what she's really feeling and show us her grieving. But we don't see this because the pace is so rushed. We have 6 episodes and there's so much other stuff to do. Daenerys is only punished for making the right choices, which I guess is very Game of Thrones. But these decisions and scenarios are just so silly. As I've said many times, this Beyond the Wall episode is totally pointless. They could have just sent wildlings and Night's Watch north of the wall to grab some undead people. But we send Jon there. She chooses to save her friends and do the right thing at the cost of one of her dragons. I mean, Tyrion actually thought Cersei would care? Like they would show her an undead person and she would help them? Clearly that's not what she's gonna do, and it turned out to be a giant waste of time. Suddenly, the smartest people in Westeros are really stupid. This happens again with episode 4. No one sees the Iron Fleet, no one predicts that the Iron Fleet is around that area and is gonna attack. There's no scouting party or anything. It's lazy writing so that we can have a series of bad things happen to Daenerys that are totally out of her control, and they just beat her down so much that she just decides that she's gonna commit mass genocide. Weiss and Benioff have always enjoyed surprising audiences, but this was at the expense of telling a coherent story and a character arc that actually made sense. I have no issue with her becoming the Mad Queen at all. It's what's gonna happen in the books too. But the writing of her transformation is so rushed and confusing. It isn't a gradual build-up. It's a series of scenes, some of which she's kind of evil, some of which she isn't. Dany has never killed innocent people. She is so opposed to it that when her dragons accidentally killed innocent people, she locked them in a dungeon for an entire season. The only reason I could see Daenerys doing this is if she went completely nuts and had a total break with reality.
How do you know it'll be good?
Because I know what is good.
What about everyone else? The other people who think they know what's good?
They don't get to choose.
We need to see acts of madness scattered throughout her story. Burning the Tarleys wasn't an act of insanity. There has not been one act of madness throughout this entire show. Maybe put a negative force in her life, like a person who's kind of a bad guy, that persuades her into being more cruel and ruthless and paranoid. So I have this little book titled The World of Ice and Fire. It's just about Game of Thrones world and everything. So I just want to look at the rule of Daenerys' father, the Mad King Aerys II, Aerys Targaryen. So allow me to read you this little segment. The march of the king's madness seemed to abate for a time in 274 AC, when Queen Rala gave birth to a son. So profound was his grace's joy that it seemed to restore him to his old self once again. But Prince Jaehaerys died later that same year, plunging Aerys into despair. In his black rage, he decided the babe's wet nurse was to blame and had the woman beheaded. Not long after, in a change of heart, Aerys announced that Jaehaerys had been poisoned by his own mistress, the pretty young daughter of one of his household knights. The king had the girl and all of her kin tortured to death. During the course of their torment, it is recorded, all confessed to the murder, though the details of their confessions were greatly at odds. That's the kind of shit the Mad King did.
I will not attack King's Landing. We will not attack King's Landing.
When his son died, he killed the wet nurses and people who had nothing to do with it. That's an act of madness. Again, in the books, one of the biggest causes of Aerys Targaryen's madness was when he was captured in Dustindale. Basically, his capture made him more paranoid and aggressive. He killed all of his captors and their entire family, and burned down all of their villages. Daenerys was captured in season 6, and yeah, she was kind of mad. She burned down that one hut, but you can definitely see a difference in their reactions to these things. She didn't, cut off their lady parts. Is it that people don't respect her?
I saw the way they looked at you. I know that look. So many people have looked at me that way, but never here. Never on this side of the sea.
Is it that Jon isn't in love with her anymore?
If I didn't know, I'd be happy right now. I want it to be the way it was between us.
Is it that she felt her position on the Iron Throne was threatened? Because there is no reason for her to feel that. Tyrion gave up Varys, who was dead. Jon is not going to tell anyone about it. She has the Dothraki and the Unsullied, 2 giant armies, so no one is gonna mess with her. That's not even mentioning the dragon. And she should have had 2 dragons if not for this stupid scene. The only one Daenerys might have to worry about is Sansa, who might start spreading that Jon is a Targaryen, but that has nothing to do with King's Landing, nothing to do with burning the innocents of King's Landing.
I am not here to be Queen of the Ashes.
I'm here to free the world from tyrants. That is my destiny. And I will serve it no matter the cost.
All she had to do was take the Iron Throne and she would have had everything she wanted. The tyrants are gone. King's Landing is hers. You have to clearly establish what is going on in her head so that we understand it too, right here. And they did such a poor job of this that in the previously on segment of this episode, they have like voiceovers and stuff giving quotes and...
He has the better claim to the throne.
Every time a Targaryen is born, the gods flip a coin.
The Mad King gave his enemies the justice he thought they deserved.
Children are not their fathers.
Be a dragon. You have a gentle heart.
Targaryen, alone in the world. It's a terrible thing.
You don't want to wake the dragon, do you?
Look at all the foreshadowing we've done to set up this moment. It isn't earned at all.
You look at those people who have been closest to her for such a long time, and almost all of them have either turned on her or died, and she's very much alone. And that's a dangerous thing for someone who's got so much power to feel that isolated. So at the very time when she needs guidance and those kind of close friendships and advice the most, everyone's gone.
When you ignore all of the behind-the-scenes stuff of them trying to explain what's going on, what you have is a character decision that is just very confusing. Daenerys has always been ruthless toward her enemies, and she's always talked of breaking the wheel, destroying this established order that allows tyrants to gain such power. But I still don't see how destroying this entire city and killing thousands of innocent people does this, and how in her head she would even think it would accomplish what she wants. The people she's burning alive usually are bad, and these are Lannister soldiers. These people are the enemy. She's always had immense sympathy for the underprivileged, for the poor, for the innocent. For her to betray all of that is bad writing. Last time we see her in episode 4, she looks normal. And then, like, we cut to her in episode 5, and she's all frail and pale. And, oh, you don't buy her arc as a character? Look, we have her crackhead makeup on. Oh no, you see, it was set up really well because Olenna Tyrell last season said, be a dragon.
Be a dragon.
Yeah. So therefore, she should destroy everything. You know, she really cared about Olenna Tyrell and what she had to say. She was a really important character to Dany.
He's a clever man, your hand. I've known a great many clever men. I've outlived them all. You know why? I ignored them.
And she took that advice as seriously as Tyrion's, Varys's, Jon's, and Jorah's. I haven't even discussed the rest of the characters that were butchered this episode. So Jaime left Brienne, right, so that he could go with Cersei. He gets caught along the way, thank God. Tyrion finds out. And so the smartest thing Tyrion could do if he wanted Jaime to survive, which is what he wants, is to just leave Jaime there, because he's not going to go anywhere. This is the safest place for him. But Tyrion lets him go because he has some ridiculous plan. So Jaime's going to run into the city, grab Cersei, and then they're going to run away on a boat to somewhere. That's their plan. But, of course, before they escape, Jaime has to talk Cersei into surrendering the city.
If not for yourself, if not for her, then for every one of the million people in that city, innocent or otherwise.
To be honest, I never really cared much for them. Innocent or otherwise.
What?
Burn them all, he said. Burn them in their homes, burn them in their beds. Tell me if your precious Renly commanded you to kill your own father and stand by while thousands of men, women, and children burned alive, would you have done it? Would you have kept your oath then?
To be honest, I never really cared much for them. Innocent or otherwise.
You do care for one innocent. I know you do. And so does Cersei.
So now they're implying that the only reason Jaime would talk Cersei into a surrender is to protect his unborn kid? Like, he wouldn't try to talk her out of it for the many, many innocent people, but he would for his kid? But along the way, Euron gets in a little fight with him. And of course, Euron just washed up on shore. They fight, Jaime gets stabbed a few times, but of course he has plot armor on, so it's not that bad. Then you have Varys, who is so smart and so cunning, he's the kind of guy who has a plan for every plan for every plan. And now all of a sudden, he's found out in 5 seconds and is just captured.
I hope I'm wrong.
Why would you hope you are wrong? Why not just stay alive and assure that she doesn't kill the entire city? Yeah, alright, we'll just leave it up to chance. The only parts of this episode I enjoyed was like Jon going through the city. He was just mortified the entire time. This honorable guy realizing that he did the wrong thing and backed the wrong person. This was interesting to watch. The two Clegane brothers fighting was very well done because these guys are just dumb brutes. There was nothing clever about the writing or anything, but there didn't need to be. It was just brutal violence and they both died. I like that. It's what these two guys are best at writing. She traveled all the way from Winterfell, King's Landing, which takes a long time. She goes all the way into the city with Sandor, reaches the Red Keep, and then at that moment, Sandor's like,
go home, go.
She's like 20 feet away from Cersei, and now he's like, okay, Arya, you should get out of here. And then Arya proceeds to run through the apocalypse and somehow makes it through.
So it irritates me when the hero is going through incredible dangers and none of them die.
Arya just runs through this whole thing and somehow doesn't die. I get she's a skilled assassin and she was trained by the Faceless Men, And she would try to help people if she was there. But the fact that she survives all of this is totally ridiculous. She's literally the only one alive. And then there's a horse that comes out of nowhere. And I was thinking like, okay, maybe this is Bran warging into like a horse and then, but like the following episode, we never see the horse again. It's never explained. This whole scene was so corny. How did this horse survive this?
We very, very rarely do slow motion. We don't like slow motion. It tends to feel self-conscious to us and a little bit cheesy.
People think she deserves something more cruel, but I don't know. All of her kids are dead and her city is burning down to the ground and she's miserable and doesn't want to die. I think this is pretty sad. It was more poetic for sure. This whole kingdom she built up just falling apart above her. If only Cersei and Jaime had hugged over there, they might have made it. It's a shame one of the best characters in the show is given so little to do this season. Oh well. What else is new? Now, I'm going to talk about a character I have barely mentioned up to this point, and this is his last episode. So let's talk about Euron Greyjoy was supposed to be the next Ramsay Bolton, the next Joffrey Baratheon. The escalation of these characters makes sense. Joffrey was a fucking little brat, and I hated him. Of all these characters, he's probably the most unlikable for me. But the thing is, while Joffrey has power, he doesn't know how to use it. He's not smart, he doesn't know how to manipulate people. He's just a spoiled child with lots of power, and he abuses it basically every chance he gets. Ramsay Bolton is much more intimidating, because not only is he pure evil, he's very competent. He's a good fighter, a good archer. He doesn't care about anybody but himself. In the Battle of the Bastards, he basically almost wins, if not for Sansa coming in with more troops. And then Euron Greyjoy is just a fucking stupid douchebag. I was willing to put up with his douchebagginess if it went anywhere, and I've been holding out hope all these seasons that they would do something cool with him, but they never do. He should have died right here with the Iron Fleet, but he somehow jumps off and then washes up on shore like everybody else. Like the people that last episode. As it stands, this character was a total waste of time. Cersei Lannister is such a great character, and she's totally wasted on scenes with this idiot. I have no issue with having a different interpretation of the character in the show versus the books, but from how Euron sounds in the books, it's just way more interesting. Euron apparently uses dark magic, or he's obsessed with dark magic. I don't know, I'm not up to that part yet. It sounds awesome, and it's the next logical step you would take with these villains, right? You go from an incompetent king to a really competent evil general to a crazy evil guy who uses dark magic and all kinds of stuff like that. But instead, all Euron does is fuck Cersei, fight Jaime, and then has the Iron Fleet, which is there whenever we need Daenerys to feel a little down in the dumps. Basically, Euron Greyjoy's fleet is indestructible and can teleport wherever it needs to be for the plot. Like in the 4th episode, Euron's fleet only has a few scorpions, and they manage to destroy the entire fleet and kill a dragon. Then in the following episode, there's a huge fleet, all of them have scorpions, and there are scorpions on the castle walls as well, and yet Daenerys somehow is able to fight them all with one dragon. Oh, but see, we needed this to happen for the plot, so it doesn't really matter if it makes sense. In terms of characters teleporting all over the map, Euron is by far the worst.
I saw it sink beneath the waves.
While we're on the topic of teleporting, there's this part in episode 6 where Grey Worm is executing Lannister soldiers. Then Jon walks to Daenerys, who is over by the throne room area, and then when he gets there, Grey Worm is at the very top of the steps with her. Like, how the fuck did he get there? I don't have an issue with Bran being the king necessarily. I guess if you read me his character description on Wikipedia, I would go, oh, I guess he's a good candidate for king. But Bran has never done anything to earn that spot of being king. Other people helped him and sacrificed themselves so that he could learn how to be the three-eyed raven. We don't see him for the entirety of Season 5, and in Season 6, he's just saved again and brought back south of the wall. And then for these next 2 seasons, he proceeds to do nothing but read off some vague prophecies to people. He helps kill Littlefinger, I guess, and he wargs into some birds, I think, during the Battle of Winterfell, and he just gets to be king.
And who has a better story? than Bran the Broken.
Literally anyone else. He knew all of this was going to happen, and he didn't stop it. He knew Daenerys was gonna burn down King's Landing, and yet he didn't warg into the dragon at some point and stop her.
He saw us!
Or even just tell Jon before he leaves, hey, Daenerys is gonna burn down King's Landing, so be sure to stop her before that. Again, all DB and Weiss know how to write is dumb action. Oh god, this kid's in a wheelchair. He can't kick people or punch people or do anything. What are we gonna do? But he's gotta be king anyway. I was mostly satisfied with Jon Snow's conclusion. He gets sent back to the Night's Watch. It's kind of fitting. Sansa becomes the Queen of the North. Arya just goes west of Westeros. It's not so much where they ended up I have the issue with, it's how we got here. Sansa, Arya, and Bran have barely had any development over these past 2 seasons. I don't feel like they've learned anything or had any growth. Tyrion being Hand of the King was fitting. He has to undo all the mess he made. I like that part. Peter Dinklage gave a really powerful performance, especially when he found Cersei and Jaime in the rubble. But god, when Sam pulled out that book and it's like...
A Song of Ice and Fire. Archmaester Ebro's history of the wars following the death of King Robert.
This was just lame fan service. Like a lot of the season was just lame fan service. Did they forget who they're making the show for? I think they did. This is a show for adults, right? I feel like I'm watching a grade school play.
What does he say about me?
I don't believe you're mentioned.
Now, let me be honest. I love this show for its amazing characters, its complex storytelling, the detailed world. But I also loved watching Game of Thrones for moments like this. Listen, I'm an adult. I want to see bouncing tits. I want to see swinging dicks. I want to see guys get their fucking throats ripped out. Where's all the violence and the intrigue and the vulgarity I've come to expect from Game of Thrones?
Thank the gods for Bessie and her tits.
People used to curse all the time and slap each other, fucking violent deaths every episode. Oh, Daenerys is bleeding out her nose and her mouth. Look how Shakespearean this is. Killed by her lover.
This is our reason. It has been from the beginning, since you were a little boy with a bastard's name. And I was a little girl who couldn't count to 20.
Give me a break. Game of Thrones used to be badass. Oh look, we're going to cut to all these different Stark children and they're going to be framed in the exact same position to show how the Stark children are kind of one unit. Aren't you guys so clever? Now this show just feels like it's made for the people who watch it in a bar and just cheer whenever a dragon shoots out fire or there's some fan service moment. They weren't cheering when Dany became the villain, though. They were all pretty silent during that part. The fact that Weiss and Benioff thought they could wrap up this entire show in 13 episodes is insane. They didn't stick the landing. And I understand why they didn't stick the landing. It was a hard landing to stick. But they didn't do it.
There's too many elements to be able to please everyone.
Yeah, you're not going to tie everything
up. Complex a story.
I think some people will be satisfied and others not so much.
I just think it's going to be a full, some people will be like, and some people will be like, and some will be like, eh.
I don't think anyone should really, it's like when you finish a book, like, you're not happy it's over, are you? You don't finish a good book and go, I'm happy I finished that.
Yeah. Sometimes you are, if it's an amazing ending, if it turns out as you like and you go, now that is an ending.
Yeah, it was almost like I had every single emotion someone could have, and then then it went like a vacuum, like it just went, and then I just walked out.
My fan theory didn't come true. My life is ruined. My life is over. I used to consider Game of Thrones to be one of the greatest shows of all time. despite the subpar writing in seasons 5 and 6.
20 men rode into our camp without a single guard sounding the alarm.
That's why I've started reading the books after watching the show, because I want to know what actually happens, not this dumb version of what happens. I understand that Weiss and Benioff wanted to move on to other projects, but they should have just handed it off to other competent showrunners, instead of just deciding to wrap it all up in 13 episodes and then go work on Star Wars. This was a terrible decision. What, like, this fan base of people who have been watching the show for years are haters? No, what happened is people who love the show and genuinely cared about these characters are really disappointed with where they were taken. Like, I spent all of this time watching these episodes and learning the history and everyone's names, only for the writers to just not even care about most of this stuff. And let's just wrap it up real quick. Now medieval shows and fantasy shows are a dime a dozen, and Game of Thrones has just kind of morphed into one of those. I guess these seasons got the job done. They ended the show, but it's just gonna be another thing we add to that shelf at the HBO office. Things that could have been great.